So with Burley's report in particular, some of these short chain fatty acid producing bacteria were really low. And so inflammation in the gut, leaky gut, one of the first places we see it is the skin. Why is that? Because skin is our largest organ. So whenever I see an itchy dog, I don't ever think allergies. I think gut imbalance.
Okay. Welcome to the No Bad Dogs podcast. And guys, if you're joining us either audio or even video, Melissa and I are just talking about my dog Burley, which most of you guys know and are familiar with. And it's led me down this deep rabbit hole of wanting to know more, and also just, really getting into why dog owners don't know more about their dog's gut biome and their skin and their diets and their nutrition, which then could lead to behavioral things like gut microbiome, and what they eat is now being linked with anxiety and reactivity and aggression. And so I'm really excited to dive down this rabbit hole. And Melissa and I were just talking before we started the record. And so that's why I just was like, all right, let's just hit record so we can jump right into it. We're talking about Burley, but Burley is, well, why don't you introduce yourself first, and then we'll get back into our conversation.
Well, it's so nice to see you and hang out, and that we get to have this chit chat on here. So, pleasure to meet you. Thanks so much for having me, because this is the rabbit hole I always like to go down. I can kind of tend to nerd out here when it comes to the microbiome, so I'm going to try to keep it a little bit on the surface. But I'm Melisa Natanson. I am a certified professional canine nutritionist and certified holistic pet health coach. I've got a lot of education, but more importantly, my biggest education, like you, Tom, was my dog Darla, and she was 15 years of Ivy League type status. And I learned more about the microbiome than I probably ever wanted to. But now, like you, my goal is to look at the microbiome, look what's going on, look what it's connected to, and digest the science and get it back out to parents in a way that they can understand. Because, like you said, I think so often pet parents don't always connect the microbiome to everything that's going on with the dog. They think it's mostly digestion, and it's not. The microbiome is responsible for so many processes in the body. I mean, some of the numbers are staggering. I mean, 70 to 90% estimates are of the immune system is in the microbiome. And it's not just the digestion station. It's responsible for immune signaling, hormone production, whether or not things like histamine that are involved in allergies get degraded in the right way or produced in the right way. So is it still an emerging field? I think so. And I think we're also just kind of starting to scratch the surface of how powerful it is.
Exactly. And that's why, I this podcast has given me such a cool opportunity to sit down with people like you and learn more, because as we were just talking about Burley, and so I sent over you a picture of what Burley was going through, and then you did get a copy of his gut biome results. Is that correct? Great.
I did. I have analyzed it.
Heck yeah. I'm excited to go through.
Style.
Yeah. I'm super stoked to go through that and just get your feedback on it and see what you're seeing and things like that. And so for people who have dogs with itchy skin, redness, ear irritation, paw irritation, all this stuff could, of course, be linked to their diet, what they're eating, proteins, allergies, a bunch of different things, gut biome. But for me as a dog owner who this isn't, I'm a trainer. I specialize in behavior and teaching dogs things. And so I'm so ignorant to all this, and I'm learning as much as I can. And it's cool because this is my opportunity to kind of bring people along. So because of my career, I get to rub elbows with all these different people, which has been, I can't express how awesome it is, to be able to do that. Right. It's such a benefit. I'm so grateful for that opportunity. And selfishly, I get to learn more, and through this podcast, I'm like, I'm going to bring other people along for the ride. Like everybody who's listening to this and watching this, I'm instead of you just calling me and say, hey, Tom, I got the results. I know that you took some of our FMTs. This is what I'm seeing. Here's what I recommend. I'm like, wait, let me hit record because I want to share this. I want to share this with dog owners because I know for a fact that this stuff is going to be helpful. And for me, it's going to be life-changing. I mean, even some of the things that I see and hear on other, human podcasts, where I'm hearing about all these different things that are going on in the world, like peptides and learning how to fast and reconstruct and kind of biohack and really just there's a new wave of health. There's a new wave of things that is going on against kind of the grain of what we traditionally have been taught. And of course, it's going against the grain for the better in many, many different ways where we're seeing results. I've already seen results immensely with my own personal life, and now I'm excited to continue to dive deep into the dog world and with the health and kind of the biohacking and even I'm even talking to people about different peptides and what's going
Yeah,
on with that.
it's
And
fascinating stuff.
it's really exciting.
The
And so,
BPC, the BPC
yeah,
157, that's a whole nother conversation, but just jumping in real quick, has shown some
please.
really remarkable results in the microbiome as far as gut sealing. But the mechanism of that is a little harder to understand. But we'll still dive into one thing that you brought up that was really important is a lot of pet parents are thinking, okay, my dog has this inherent food intolerance. Like, oh, they can't do chicken or they can't do turkey or whatever's going on. And this is the cause of all of these, atopic dermatitis, the itchy red ears, the skin, the corncob style paw licking that is going on. This is not
That's me.
skin deep. This is gut deep. And really at the core of it, it signals immune confusion. Again, going back to what I mentioned about the gut being 70-90% of the immune system, we're going to back that up a little bit and dive into a little bit more of why Burley had such gnarly, I mean, those are gnarly. Sorry, I'm a California girl. I use gnarly. Gnarly, kind of these like almost skin type lesions going on that just seem to grow. And it, as soon as I see something like that, I said, this is immune system confusion bordering on immune system overload because the immune system doesn't know what to do. So I kind of like to look at it like this. We're just going to set the stage for the microbiome a little bit. I like to think of the microbiome as the parking lot outside of the body company. Okay, we've got the body company and all these functions go on. We've got to have different workers. We've got to have from janitors to CEOs to engineers to secretaries, all the things. So all these workers need somewhere to park, the microbiome parking lot. And there's a mixture of bacteria, trillions of bacteria. There's also yeast. There can also be protozoa. So it's really an ecosystem, even though it's a parking lot. And that's the analysis I'm using. It's like an ecosystem. It's like a forest. We have to have all these different species together to work. So what happens, just to kind of make this simple, when there is a dysbiosis or we see something like allergies going on, is the immune system getting confused. So think of it like this. It's a really like high profile company and it's got a security system. And so in order to get into work, you've got to go through the security system. And in the gut wall, there's something called GALT, which is gut associated lymphoid tissue. And this is like immune system surveillance. It's just kind of watching and surveying everything that comes in, whether it's a pollen or a turkey or a beef. And most of the time, if the immune system is balanced, then they're like, okay, good, you're good, you're good, you're good. But what happens is if there's dysbiosis and the parking lot gets imbalanced, meaning not enough good workers are heading in the door like they're supposed to, if we've got some like rabble rousers coming along or a disgruntled employee that decides to throw a tailgate party, then not as many of the good workers can park and the hangover starts to get bad. They're like out there drinking and then they decide, hey, we're going to like bum rush the building, and the GALT security system gets overwhelmed. And they're like, whoa, what do we do? So then all of a sudden we've got undigested proteins or toxins leaking through the gut wall. That's what we call leaky gut. Also, a lot of inflammation kind of goes along with this. So in the midst of all this, say the good like turkey guys try to get through. They're like, we need to go in so the body can have proteins, right? But security is so overwhelmed and confused and doesn't see the good guys inside the rush of the bad guys. They get confused, and all of a sudden the cameras are like, whoa, I see you, I see you, I see you. You're not supposed to be going in there. Halt, stop, press the red button. All of a sudden, this is how we have the immune system with red alarm. And so all of a sudden, those undigested proteins or inflammatory compounds that are going through trigger the immune system to produce antibodies against it. And so this is where we get food intolerances. This is the root of food intolerances. It's not necessarily that they've had them inherently, it's that they develop from a confused immune system. So this is where it gets really interesting. So certain compounds in the gut, like short chain fatty acids, we can go more into that later, help the gut security system out. They're the peacekeepers. They're like, hey, calm down. We're going to handle this. We're going to help get the microbes back in order. When you're using something like FMT, that kind of repaves the parking lot. It brings in a whole new workforce that's in the right communities, and those slackers get kicked out. And so it gives the security system a chance to just kind of calm down. They're also really good helpers. It's kind of like calling in the backup. Like, we're going to call in the backup and do that. So with Burley's report in particular, some of these short chain fatty acid producing bacteria were really low. And so inflammation in the gut, leaky gut, one of the first places we see it is the skin. Why is that? Because skin is our largest organ. So whenever I see an itchy dog, I don't ever think allergies. I think gut imbalance.
Okay.
Because going along with that, some of these bacteria that we have are also responsible for producing or degrading histamine. So we always think of histamine as like kind of the bad guy, when it's really just the messenger. It's the chemical messenger from the gut. We actually need histamine in our gut to help us digest food. But when we see stuff like what is happening with Burley, it's one of two things: too much histamine getting into the bloodstream, flooding to the skin, or there's a yeast issue. That's a whole nother topic, because yeast is a big one right now. So again, going back to dysbiosis, there's a couple of key bacteria in the gut, bifidos and lactobacillus, that can degrade histamine, and they produce an enzyme called DAO that helps degrade histamine so that it just doesn't keep getting produced, going through the leaky gut, getting into the bloodstream, and making a very itchy dog. I know that was a long one. Does that kind of clear it up?
Yeah, no, that's what I think, a lot of people deal with. I know I certainly still am. And so what you're saying, because I would, again, just being a dog owner with this, I look at his breakouts. He's itching, he's taking his back paw up and he's itching his belly, which is where all that was. And so my process has been, hey, listen, my dog's got an allergy. Okay. And so I booked it. I'll just give you my roadmap as a dog owner. What I've already gone through is I booked an appointment with the dermatologist. Well, actually, back up even further, I've been to like 3 different just small vets. And basically they're like, okay, let's scrape for ringworm. So I scraped for that, came back negative. Okay. We don't really know what else this could be. And then, so I went to another vet. And again, not a specialist. And then it was so bad at that time. I mean, his skin was raised off his body, red, irritated, probably
He's miserable. You're miserable.
Right. Yeah. Very uncomfortable.
The worst.
It looked like a very, very, very bad sunburn. Like it was deep red. I have videos of it. It was really gnarly. So like the picture that I sent you, basically imagine that, but then just like a puffed out version of that.
That's histamine.
Yeah, it was really bad. And so he was uncomfortable. And so again, I'm calling his breeder, and I'm like, hey, because he has his brother. And I said, is Moose dealing with anything like this? And he goes, nope. I said, okay. And he's like, it could be allergies to where you live. It could be his food. It could be this. It could be a protein. I'm like, so it's very overwhelming. I'm like, okay, where do I start? How do I start this? And so all of my dogs for the last, I don't know, probably 9 to 10 years have been on a raw diet, because I don't really want to give my dogs a processed food unless I have to, unless it's something, that's maybe in the raw food that's causing this. I don't know. I'm okay with that if that's the case, for sure. But so then it's like, what do I do? And then eventually it was the last veterinarian that I went to made the most sense, where she said, this is what's now called like dermatitis. So basically it's just, she was basically saying that he had one little, little pocket of like, I don't know, like an external, I don't know what it was, like a wound. It almost looked like a wound, like what you're seeing. And then he itched it, and then it just spread everywhere. And so I'm like, okay. And she's like, I would go see a dermatologist, because this is a very out of my, over my head type of thing. I don't really know what this is. I can treat it, which we did
Mm-hmm.
with like an anti-inflammatory and I think maybe a steroid or something. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And so it went down, which was great. He felt better, but of course, it's coming back. And so we went to a dermatologist, and she was great. But she basically said like, she doesn't know what it is either. She's like, it could be food, it could be environmental. It's really hard to tell. And she recommended a shot basically every, I don't know, like quarter, basically every like 4 months or whatever. And she's like, and that could help reduce it. But from my research, it kind of like suppresses it. It doesn't really
As
fix the problem. And so I was like, okay. So then I like pull back, and I'm like, oh my, and I'm like, I don't really know what else to do. And then that's where I started getting into the gut biome ethos, and really starting, it was like a whole new world of everything, and I talked to so many different people just to try to get as much information as I can. And so the only thing that had worked that I can say for sure was the Legacy Biome FMT.
wow,
And so
fantastic.
for people who don't know, and if you haven't heard other podcasts, me talking about FMT, which we can dive into, is fecal matter transplant. And we can dive into that in a moment. But that was the only thing that reduced the spread of what was going on. And so I'm going to pop up a picture if you're watching this video form. But essentially what it looks like is, it looks like little patches of like, think of ringworm. Like it looks like little blisters almost. And at some point it goes all the way up his flanks. So like his sides of his ribs. And it almost looks like he's getting mange, because his hair starts
Yeah.
to fall off. And it's got to be uncomfortable. And so now I'm in this gut biome whole process of trying to figure out what I can do with Burley. And so we did a gut biome test, which essentially, for people who don't know, is you can do a fecal test with your dog or your cat, and you can send it in to a lab, and they will give you a in-depth report, which Melisa has in her hands, about what is going on. And so, and I did that with my son, who is a year, but at the time he had really, really bad eczema. And so that's where we actually started getting into gut biome originally. So
Yeah.
I was kind of primed a little bit with gut biome, and understanding that, you can do all the steroid creams you want and all that, but it's not fixing the problem. And we did a gut biome test with him. And similarly, they send you a report. And let's say he was 6 months old at the time, his gut biome was acting like a 3-month-old baby. And so he wasn't able to keep up with what was going on. And
Interesting.
yeah, so he had eczema from his belly all the way up to his basically his chest, to his neck.
Yeah.
And it was like red braille, like
Whoa.
really
I
uncomfortable.
I can so
Um,
empathize with that.
it was
I have
awful.
eczema too, so it's
Yeah,
been a
bad. And it was
poor guy,
for a baby,
little fella.
you can't explain to him why he's in, so he doesn't want to sleep, and we're putting jammies on him, and he's fighting us. And now that is 100% cleared up. That's another story. But that's where I really started getting into this gut biome. So do you want to just kind of go over what you're seeing on his test, and a roadmap that we can go down, to let me know like why we're seeing what we're seeing with the yeast and all that stuff?
Yeah. So on this test, there's not very many tests that actually measure yeast, because we've got to measure yeast by their DNA. So there's one test that we can do, but we'll talk about it later. Of course, a normal microbiome is going to contain, again, bacteria and yeast, and it's kind of like the forgotten part of the microbiome, because there's trillions of bacteria, a small amounts of yeast, but they can be up to 200 times bigger than the bacteria. So if they get out of balance, they can cause problems. And again, gut yeast is going to flood the skin too. So it might have been a combination of both imbalance in bacteria and yeast as well. And here's where the magic of FMT comes in, because if we go back to, once again, the microbiome being a forest, we need all that diversity, the trees, the bushes, the flowers, the fungus in appropriate proportions in order to keep the ecosystem and ultimately the immune system operating correctly. So Burley's not, I'm looking at his report, he's not missing anything. What he's not missing anything, but I won't say that there's diversity necessarily missing, but he's low on the ones that are the gut wall peacekeepers.
Okay. So explain to me in layman's terms.
Okay.
Gut wall peacekeeper. I'm thinking like a Native American standing there keeping the peace here.
I like it. Okay. So we're going to go back to one of my favorite topics. And I don't want to go too in the weeds, but short chain fatty acids. So short chain fatty acids are something that help seal the gut wall. They calm the immune system so that it's not overreactive, because Burley's problem was he's got an overreactive immune system and his skin is like, I don't know what to do with this. I got to get it out somewhere.
Now, is there a reason why he would have an overreactive? Is that just his DNA? Is that just who he is?
No, that's going back to, again, 70 to 90% of the immune system is in the gut lining. So if there is an imbalance in bacteria, then the immune system in the gut wall tends to be confused, because even though you're a amazing raw feeder, raw feeding doesn't necessarily fix an ecosystem. It feeds what's already there. So if Burley's gut was imbalanced, and we can go into why Burley's gut might have been imbalanced, and there's some leaky gut going on. Again, we have some of these invaders coming through and acting as a trigger for the immune system to start producing antibodies and have to eventually show, start coming up in the skin. Excuse me there. But looking at some of those short chain fatty acid producing bacteria in Burley's gut are low. So he's missing the peacekeepers and missing some key ingredients that are going to help seal up that gut wall, so that we're not producing antibodies and he's not inadvertently reacting to things like food or even an inhaled allergy. When I see pictures like Burley's, it ends up being a combination of things. It ends up being both like a contact allergy. It could just be from the grass or a pollen, an inhaled allergy, something going on in the air, and food. And I know you're probably like, yeah, but I feed raw. So again, we're going back to immune system confusion. Gut dysbiosis, inflammation, immune system confusion via the gut wall lining. And it's not quite sure what is a friend and what is a foe anymore, because it's constantly surveilling everything. So you could be feeding the greatest diet in the world, but if at that point it is a trigger, again, the food can't reseed an entire ecosystem. I hope that helps kind of explain what was going on with Burley. So when he started taking the FMT, what the magic of this is, what happens is, instead of just like feeding a few strains of bacteria, we need the community. We need the short chain fatty acids. We need the peacekeepers. And one of the reasons FMT works so well is because it contains those short chain fatty acid producing bacteria. You can't bottle those. You can't sprinkle them on their food. They're acetate, propionate, and butyrate. And they are in FMT because, again, FMT contains the entire microbial community. And we're finding more and more that it's not just about feeding certain strains. I was reading a study that they did in 2024 where vets are finally starting to look at the microbiome as the basis of atopic dermatitis, fancy way of saying what was going on with Burley, all these skin outbreaks, things like that. And they did not control the food that the dogs were eating, so we don't know. They were just all kind of eating whatever, but they did supplement with two key bacteria, a bifido and a lactobacillus. And they did this over 3 months. at the end of this, the dogs did have more diversity and the itching had subsided. But the key here, the nuance here is we don't know what happened to those dogs after they stopped the probiotic. Probiotics rarely engraft and colonize. They're kind of like temp workers at the gut body company. We have to call them every day. Hey, you coming to work today? AKA, like giving the probiotic capsule. So they're going to keep coming in and feeding that certain strain or doing that certain job as a temp worker because we're still giving them. Probiotics are like bringing in a permanent workforce that knows how to work as a team already and work as a community already. One other important thing is we're also finding it's not always just about feeding a few good bacteria that is going to, can that be beneficial? Absolutely. But it's really the community. And that kind of pulls in the yeast part of it too, because if Burley had a yeast issue, I mean, if yeast gets out of control, then that can be an issue at itself. But if there's too little yeast, E. coli can go out of control. And so they all kind of balance each other out. So sometimes a probiotic can be too much of a good thing. And that's where, again, the magic of FMT.
So what do I do from here? I mean, looking at that report,
Yes.
What would you recommend for a dog like Burley? He has,
and Burley's been on, Burley had to do antibiotics since the last round of FMT, right?
Yeah, and he's going to have to do another round again because he just had surgery. So, I have FMT on.
Let's talk about that after.
Yeah, I have FMT now, and I have probiotics. But and once he gets over the antibiotics and that cycle is done, what would you recommend for a dog like Burley? How can I rebuild this whole gut biome?
Right. Well, I have a 3-step approach when it comes to itchy jogs. That's kind of like my ironclad approach, and it's taken me literally 10 years to figure this out because similar to Burley, I had a dog that would itch sometimes, but what ended up happening is the wind would blow and she would break out in hives, massive amount of hives everywhere. And I couldn't figure it out. I'm giving the probiotics. I'm changing the food. I'm doing the omega-3s. I'm online. Like, what do I do? And couldn't figure it out. She was having, again, an overreactivity to a pollen as an inhaled allergy because her immune system was already confused because she had a bad gut because she was a rescue. She'd been on antibiotics, the whole thing. And I know you already know this, Tom, but I have to say it. Antibiotics are a little bit like a forest fire to the gut. And so they wipe out a good majority of the diversity and they can really knock down some of those good bacteria. And so FMT is, of course, one of your strongest tools in this because we can't just throw a few seeds into a forest and expect a rainforest to grow out of it. We need that diversity, but we can't get there if we're just putting a few seeds in a desert. And so, I mean, gut healing, there's a couple of gut healing supplements that I recommend. We'll go into that, but let's go over the steps that I like. If you haven't done a food intolerance test, I'm actually a pretty big fan of it. And here's why. Number one, food intolerance test. So we know what Burley is reacting to right now. What is his immune system ticked off about? Because if we can stop the immune system for a little bit from doing this 5-alarm fire, push the red button for a little bit, it gives the immune system a chance to chill out for a little bit while FMT is doing its work in the background, like reseeding the gut, reforesting the ecosystem, and getting those short chain fatty acids in there that bring peace to the immune system. So seeing what's going on, again, do food intolerance, just see where Burley needs to be. It doesn't have to be forever. Usually I would say 30 to 60 days. Let's give the immune system a break, incorporate FMT. And in severe cases where I know an IBD or an IBS or some kind of GI disease is going on, some gut healing herbs in there too to help FMT get in there and truly engraft, which is just a fancy way of saying we're going to help the forest grow. It's like a fertilizer. That's where I would go with that. So, and I usually recommend FMT, a round of FMT after every course of antibiotics. I know that seems a lot, but I spend so much time, Tom, reading studies about the effects of antibiotics on the microbiome, and they're much worse than what we thought.
Yeah, I know that they're good for keeping bacteria and infections away, of course, or treating an
Right.
infection, but there's also a great deal of again wiping out all the bacteria that the dog needs to stabilize, and that's where he's been on and off. He had a huge infection, and so he got
What was his infection?
his infection was so after the FMTs that I did with him. And again, for those, do you want to give me a quip for people who don't know what an FMT is? Do you want to just break it down really quick so people aren't like, what the heck are they keep talking about?
Yeah. FMT, as you mentioned, fecal microbiota transplant or transfer. So, what we're doing is we are literally taking the stool from an extremely healthy dog that has the right microbes and diversity and ecosystem in the right proportions. We we filter out all the solids and freeze dry it and put it in a happy little capsule that you can down the hatch. It's double enteric coated. It goes down to the small bowel and opens, and that's where it starts to populate. You can also do it up the tailpipe. um, in certain severe situations, a lot of vets are doing this now where we can kind of make it into a slurry or an enema that goes up the tailpipe. But Legacy Biome is amazing because they found an easy way to do it. We can put it in a happy little capsule, and our dogs can do it that way, just down the hatch.
Yeah, so they're poop pills essentially.
They're poop pills.
Poop
Yeah,
pills.
I know we don't like to. I try to stay away from the poo, but yes, essentially they're poop pills. No, they don't smell like poo. No, they're not poo. Again, we filter all the solids. We filtered it down to the community, stabilize them. It's a living community in a little capsule.
Yeah, and what I think is really cool when I tell people, I'm like, okay, think about it like this. To the lamest dog owner, aka me. Think about it like this. Your dog's gut microbiome is not good. Okay. So what we're gonna do is this dog over here has the perfect gut microbiome. We're gonna take the poop from that dog and we're gonna put it into your dog, and then it's going to help your dog's gut microbiome rebuild like the good one.
Yeah,
And and
totally.
and that's just such a cool thing. And
I'm
so
sorry I'm nerding out, by the way. Like, if
no,
I'm
don't
getting
be
way
sorry.
too
That's why
deep here, like,
no,
I nerd out on this stuff. Listeners, I'm sorry.
don't be sorry. Don't be sorry. That's why you're here. That's why that's why I'm taking notes. We want to know this stuff. This is the stuff that is super super helpful and very valuable. So please nerd on. And
Can I
so
nerd on real quick then? Because I want to
yes,
segue
please.
off for what you just said, because
Yes.
I don't miss an opportunity to explain why Burley might have had some dysbiosis to begin with. So,
And
one of the
dysbiosis is
meaning, okay,
just
I'm sorry. I'm just going to say imbalance. So, dysbiosis is a fancy way of saying the gut bacteria is out of balance. The parking lot, there is, we don't have the right amount of workers. We got some hooligans in the parking lot. We got too many bad bacteria that may be throwing parties. Anyways, here we go. So, one area of focus and research for me that I'm really digging into, because our dogs seem to be having more skin issues. I very rarely see a dog with no skin issues. So, okay, what are the factors here? We know we're by and large not feeding biologically appropriate diets, which can lead to leaky gut. That's one factor. There's a lot more environmental toxins, over vaccination, things like this. But what is also happening is the microbiome is becoming less rich every single set of puppies that we have going down. And why is that? The microbiome is passed on. The foundation of the microbiome is passed on from the mom. So it matters how they're born and how they're raised. So if one of these puppies born vaginally versus C-section, their microbiomes are going to be totally different. If the mom is out running around in the woods and the forest, again, dirt, all that stuff, licking the paws, part of the original microbiome for dogs and for humans as well. So, and if the mom had been on antibiotics and not taken something like FMT, then her base level of diversity and functionality within the gut is already lower. This is passed on. So I feel like we're just getting a dilution of the microbiome, because I feel like gut issues and skin issues are pretty much at epidemic levels now. I mean, again, I rarely see a dog that doesn't have something going on, or something lingering. So one of the amazing things about Legacy Biome is in its name, our namesake, Legacy. Our capsules come from a pack that is extremely healthy. They're out running around in the woods. They're on a biologically appropriate raw diet, and they've been taken care of by a vet. All of our donors we know by name, and they are descendants of this pack, if not that part of the original pack themselves.
Wow.
So this is where it's amazing, because those dogs still have all the diversity, and they're eating the right stuff to feed the right microbes so they can pass that diversity on to their puppies. So Tom, I'm sure, like me, at points you're like, what the hell am I actually doing wrong? Like, maybe you don't carry guilt like me, but with my own dog, I'm like, what am I doing wrong? Is it something that I fed? Is it me? Is it an allergy I don't know about? You did all the things. You took Burley to the dermatologist when, Burley may not have had strong foundations to begin with. And that's not your fault. It's not his fault. And it pops up because he's only 2. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
2 and change. Yeah.
Yeah. So, if there's something going on, we've got infections going on or other things going on, then we can just tip over the scales, and the body will find a way to show you signs. And pet parents, this is one of the things that I think is so important, and what I wish somebody would have told me. These symptoms are not that your dog is broken. They are signs saying, hey, we got to follow the symptoms. It's like a roadmap so we can get to the root causes. Because if we just continue to symptom chase, it's a lot of expense. It's a lot of money and a lot of misery for pet parent and dog.
Yeah. Because it doesn't go, it just comes back, it just keeps, it keeps coming back.
It just comes back. So, I think you've got to do minimum 30 days FMT with Burley. And if he has been on multiple rounds of antibiotics, I would go even further, because you really want that. You want that microbiome to be ironclad, because also there's the idea of susceptibility, right? So the idea of susceptibility is, where is our dog's baseline? What is their immune system baseline based on what the gut is doing or any other factors? And so, excuse me, I believe that when we've got this strong ecosystem inside, again, it's regulating immune system, hormones, brain function, the gut brain axis, that's a whole nother conversation. Then we are lowering the susceptibility of the dog to get sick, get infections, get allergies, have the licking paws to begin with. And so I don't like to look at FMT as like a last, this is like, oh my gosh, this is the last thing I'm going to try. For me, it was one of the last things that I tried too. And that's actually how, I ended up doing so much gut research, because my dog got C. diff, which is Clostridium difficile, one of the gnarliest, nastiest infections in the gut that you can get. Why was that? Because she had a certain level of susceptibility that I didn't understand. She had been dealing with gut dysbiosis for a long time, and C. diff can pop up. So we had the bloody diarrhea disaster, and I tried everything. And finally, this is when Legacy was just starting to get going. I thought, okay, let's give it a try. And within 9 days, we got Darla's Clostridium cleared. And
wow.
Clostridium is notorious for sticking around and being antibiotic resistant, because that's what we usually do. But the really amazing side effect of her doing the FMT for Clostridium is that her itchy problems went away, just like Burley. We weren't having the hive breakouts anymore. She wasn't getting, because she would get little spots too, where she would just kind of like, terrorize her little self. What I got a lot with her was like the sound. Everybody knows the sound, and the corn cob, like,
yeah,
the corn cob, like just smacking on the paws, it's tough. And I'm like, you want to be like, stop. And
yeah,
it's not their little fault.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And so what would with Burley and his test, like the FMTs did clear it up, and then again he had to go to a round of antibiotics because his first
Yeah.
infection was it was a whole thing. He I'm telling you, this dog has taught me more about dogs. I've learned more about dogs with him in the last 2 years than any other dog in my whole 13 years of working with dogs
Amen to
professionally.
that. They are
And
our best teachers.
yeah, and he has taught me so much about behavior, leash training, obedience training, health, gut biome,
Yeah.
surgery, antibiotics, testosterone, everything. And so, yeah, so he basically chewed on a stick poked him, he got an infection. They thought that they were going to have to go in and do a surgery, and luckily, so he had intravenous antibiotics overnight, and then they gave him 2 types of antibiotics to go home with, and so he was his skin looked amazing, because of all the antibiotics. Like he was really good for a while. He was living off that, but then of course it came back, and so that's where we're at. I
Axe
had
the probiotics.
What's that?
Axe the probiotics.
Don't take them.
Nope.
Okay.
Yeah.
What
When we
what sh-
when we again, so think about, so Burley has had antibiotics. Antibiotics kind of equal forest fire for the gut. And he's had several rounds. So now we're kind of dealing with a desert where a forest used to be. And if we throw a few seeds at them, AKA probiotics, which are only a few strains, when thousands of strains are already apparent in the gut. I mean, the gut has more organisms in it than the body has cells. So if we're just throwing a few seeds in there, we're not going to get the forest back. And the forest is what is the ecosystem that powers the immune system. So oftentimes, actually most of the time, I say don't do probiotics after antibiotics specifically. And I know everyone's going to say like, oh no, that's what my vet says. Listen, the research is there that is showing us that starting probiotics right after antibiotics can actually increase the chance of imbalance and dysbiosis because we're only feeding one organism. This is where FMT goes in. We're seeding the entire forest. And in some cases, probiotics can compete with certain strains in the FMT. And we want that FMT to get into the gut and colonize as a community. They're like this little worker community that they know each other. They're like, hey, we work well together. You're doing this part of the job. It's like having, I go back to the building again. We need janitors. We need secretaries. We need a CEO. We need builders. If we just have 5 CEOs, but we don't have anybody to do the work that's under that, we're not going to have a very productive body company.
Okay. Yeah, I just that makes sense. I just looked up what I ordered. I have the primitive probiotics, ancient strains for modern life with this gut maintenance and recovery for dogs. And so that's what I was looking at.
Is that the new Karen Becker one?
I don't think it's Karen Becker's.
I'll have
It
to,
just
you know what? I'm not sure. I'll have to look that up. Now, again, not saying that probiotics can't be beneficial, on down the road, but after antibiotics, my go-to is always FMT because we want to replenish the ecosystem, just not 5 CEOs. We can't run the body company that way.
Yeah, and I have the FMTs, and I planned on I stopped FMTs for a couple weeks because I retested his gut this morning because I was like I brought him in for his surgery this morning. He's still at the vet right now. He's recovering. Everything went great. He's fine. But I was waiting because I wanted to wait to the very last stool sample opportunity before he got his antibiotics, and so
Well, let's see. I mean, I can't wait to see how he is now than after FMT. And we can do this all over again. And I can tell you exactly why there's, been in some improvements or what's going on with him because reoccurrence is real. And sometimes antibiotics can clear things up in the short term as far as if we've got lowered skin immunity because gut immunity isn't good, the gut and the skin are so closely linked, we can start to have some opportunistic bacteria on the skin. And that's kind of what was proliferating. So if we cut that down with antibiotics, we have a short-term fix. But in the long run, as we continue with a gut that's dysbiotic or imbalanced, those issues are going to start to pop back up. I see it over and over and over again. A dog that has had antibiotics that previously had allergy problems, usually it's about 3 months later, I'll get a call. We got the spots again.
Yeah.
And so now I say, do not pass go, do not collect $200, get your FMT on board. Because, and I know, is it more expensive than a probiotic? Yes, it is, but we're getting a whole community. And I really do feel, pet parents, it's going to save you down the road because you're not spending the money on the Apoquel, the Cytopoint, the steroids, the symptom chasing stuff that we just keep giving, but really isn't solving the issue.
Yeah. So you would recommend, should I do start FMT tonight or wait for the course of antibiotics after?
Wait until the antibiotics are done. And I even like to do a little buffer to make sure the antibiotics are out of there. Give the antibiotics, wait until they're done. I'd give it a couple days, 3 to 5 days, and then start FMT. We want all those antibiotics out of the system.
Yeah. I mean, the FMTs are definitely, expensive, especially for the big guy. He takes 2 a day, and it's, and I have another dog too, that had leaky gut. And so I was spending quite a bit of money on FMTs. So yeah, but it's, for me, it's worth it if you can do it, for sure, because it has fixed the issue. So
well, I'm here for you. We're going to get through it.
Thank you.
We'll make sure that.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Get through this.
What else are you seeing on that test? Like, can you go through it? And when you're looking at that, what are things that stand out to you outside of the leaky gut? Are there other things? I mean, when I read that, it might as well be Chinese. I'm reading that and I'm like, okay, sure. Okay. Yeah. I can't read anything on here. So can you help read that and decipher that for me? Yes, and for other people?
And excuse my printer, like it decided to print double-sided. And I'm like, oh, for Pete's sakes. Okay. This makes it hard on me. Okay. So when I look at it, one of the first things I see the megamonas. I love that word. I don't know if you've got it in front of you, but the megamonas, those are one of the ones that are low. Again, great thing that exists, but when megamonas are low, they are one of the ones that are acetate and propionate short chain fatty acid producers. So again, immune system collimers helping the gut stay sealed and the overall immune system just operate at its optimum. So also responsible for energy metabolism. So that's interesting too. The Prevotella, that was another one on here that I saw was high, and let's see here. Was it high? I didn't highlight it here before.
And for those of you who are watching, I'm going to pop the if anybody knows how to read these, they might find it interesting. I'm going to pop his test results up on the screen. And so you can kind of look through this as well.
Yeah. So the Prevotella, that's another one. It says green, but there's none in range from what I'm seeing. And so that's low. And one of the things that particular bacteria does is it's a fiber fermenter and also producing short chain fatty acids. So interesting. And then we've got another one. Let's see here.
Yeah, one thing I added in, talking to a couple different people in this space, they said it doesn't seem like your dog is getting enough fiber. And so I looked at the We Feed Raw mix that's there, and there is no fiber there. And learning that basically there's some people who add their own fiber, and so they didn't want to put fiber in and whatever. I can't speak for We Feed Raw exactly, why they do what they do with their blends, but I know that that's been a thing talking to other people. They're like, look, a lot of commercial raw food companies don't put fiber in because a lot of people like to add it themselves. So that was one thing, is my dogs weren't getting any fiber. And that was one low hanging fruit. Like, hey, so I started with this company, Gussie's Gut, and Gussie's Gut.
You know them well.
Yeah, it's been great. They sent me, so shout out to Gussie's Gut. Shout out to Rob over at Gussie's Gut. They sent me a whole care package of everything that I needed. And essentially Gussie's Gut is fermented superfoods. With, all the veggies that I won't even eat because they're oh, but
I think it smells so good though.
Yeah, it's almost too healthy. So I stay away from some of that
That's
stuff.
extreme.
Like, but it's everything from kale to all the green stuff, and it's super easy. So if you guys are dealing with low fiber in your dog's diet, or if you get your dog's gut biome tested, and you research like, okay, my dog isn't getting gut or isn't getting fiber, or if you just look on whatever your dog is getting for fiber on your food, whatever that may be, and your dog, like I did, I was like, oh, there's zero fiber in this. Here's what I should do. Gussie's gut is great because you just put a scoop on, and then I'm usually doing either coconut water or bone broth or something on there to just make it wet, and then I mix it in, and my dogs gobble it up. So
Perfect.
they ate more veggies and fruits than my toddlers do, which is a lot
I love it.
every
I love it.
day.
I
Yeah.
mean, and that's a really good point because we don't think about that a dog's gut is kind of not that dissimilar from ours. We need the meat, fruit, and vegetables is really at the basis of what should be in our diet, and that those, we don't want to go starchy carb. Okay, no, I'm not saying starchy carbs, because starchy carbs are going to feed the opportunistic bad guys, because again, these microbes can select, and the right microbes select for the right biologically appropriate diet, i.e. meat, fruit, and vegetables, because some of these good ones, especially the bacteria that are going to produce those immune system peacekeepers, short chain fatty acids, everyone, need some carbohydrate manner in order to grow. And again, there's other ways this can go. Sometimes if there is an overgrowth of certain bacteria, we want to pull back on the carbs, but that's getting into the weeds with some of that stuff. So I'm glad you were able to identify that, Tom, and it sounds like Burley's doing better. One of the other ones, the Taurisibacter, was low, and that's another one that is immune signaling, communication with immune signaling, and is one of those that signals for serotonin production. So this is going down a whole nother road, but this is another thing we don't talk about a lot, is the enteric nervous system. We've all heard of the central nervous system, but there is an enteric nervous system. There's actually upwards of more than 100 million neurons in the gut that communicate with the brain via the vagus nerve. And so 90% of serotonin is produced in the gut. I know. But it needs the right bacteria to do that. That's going to signal it. Some serotonin is produced by the bacteria itself, other as immune signaling, because serotonin is a neurotransmitter. So, okay. So on to the bad guys. One of the ones that kind of popped out to me was, it says it's in range. I think, where was it? Peptoclostridium I wrote down. Excuse me. I think this is what happens when you start to get in your 40s and you can't see.
Can't wait.
Oh, yeah, there we go. I found it. Okay, Peptoclostridium was high. So Peptoclostridium is part of the Clostridium family. And Clostridium generally exists in the gut in lower levels. It exists there naturally. The issue is Clostridium is real touchy.
And
And it's one of
what is that? Clostridium.
Clostridium. Okay, it's
Clostridium.
just a bacteria. So the gut is a makeup of beneficial bacteria and some that can be very unbeneficial if they get out of hand. So the Clostridium family is one of them. I'm going to go
Invaders?
back. Pardon?
Are they the
Clostridium is
invaders?
invaders. Well, no, they're the rabble rousers in the parking lot. They exist there naturally. It's kind of like the disgruntled employee that like shows up and is like, "Hey, I still want a job." Like, we're not really quite sure why they're there. There has some kind of function, but the good workers take up the majority of the parking lot. And so they never really get out of control. What happens with Clostridium when it can get overgrowth is that Clostridium starts to call in its buddies, and then it starts taking up spaces away from the beneficial guys that need to go to the body company to do their job. And before you know it, Clostridium, all the bad guys, are throwing a tailgater in the microbiome parking lot, and the hangover is bad. Here's why. Clostridium produces enterotoxins that can attack the gut wall, attack the gut lining, and affect other organs. It is a nasty one. You don't want to get it. It often produces bloody stools, bloody diarrhea. So, not saying that's what is happening with Burley or will happen. Peptoclostridium is one of the minor ones on the Clostridium level, but it's still a little high. And so, when it's a little high like that, what it can do instead is it's an extra protein fermenter, which can produce extra ammonia and make it a little bit harder on the kidneys. There's a lot going on in research in the gut kidney connection right now, and that's another thing that I'm working on, is how the microbes and what they produce affect what goes into the bloodstream and therefore affect the kidneys, because the kidneys are filtering blood. We forget that the kidneys are what's filtering the blood, and the gut wall is it's like the width of a pin is all that's between what your dog eats and digests and the bloodstream.
Wow. That's kind of scary, but it also seems like, why do you think that your regular veterinarian practitioner, what's going on? Like, why is there a disconnect? Because for me as a dog owner, and this is, take out my profession, put that to the side, forget I even professionally work with dogs. As a dog owner, when I'm like, literally like, hey vet, can you help? Nah, not really. Hey, can you help? Not really. Hey, can you, hey, dermatologist, a specialist, can you help? And it's like, even then it's like, there's not answers of sustainability. It's just, again, and it's a lot like, okay, now we'll put in dog trainer back in. Now it's a lot like some people, some dog training will actually do the same thing, where they're focusing on the external problems, right? The symptoms, the barking, the whining, the spinning, the biting. I'm like, why is that happening? Because it's not going to be like, we could
There's
do
a trigger
certain
for it,
things,
right,
right?
Tom? There's
Right.
got to be
Like,
a trigger.
what's the cause of these things, right? Just like anybody else, right? But do you just think, because it's, and we're seeing this in the human health too, which is fascinating. It's scary, it's fascinating, it's sad, it's exciting, all at the same time, where you're like, you're learning about all these things that are like amazing, and you don't have to do surgery, and you could heal so much faster naturally with this way. But then the FDA doesn't support it, and surgeons don't support it, because, and then they go back and forth about why. And it's, and to us consumers, or the end user, if you will, are like scratching our heads, and we're trying to figure out. So do you just think that it's just new technology, or it's new research? Why do you think, or is it money? Like, we've seen that in the food industry. I have researched, and I've talked to researchers who have been doing this longer than I've been alive, and they have come out and said the reason why most people are choosing to feed their dogs crap is, A, for convenience and cost effective, but also it's because people want to make a ton of money. They don't care if your dog has cancer, or they're obese, or they have skin issues, or their gut biome sucks, or they get whatever. They don't care about that. What do you think is happening with gut? When I talk gut biome, to be fair, some veterinarians, even the veterinarians that I'm in, that Burley's at right now, they're like, they even told me, talk to your GI team about all the things we're going to give him before and after, to make sure we don't mess up the gut biome. And I'm like, hallelujah. Thank you for being, because there's some who are just like, oh, that's witchcraft, like gut biome, all that stuff's witchcraft, blah, blah, blah. So like, what are you seeing? Because you're kind of in between, right? Because you started off as just a pet owner, and now you're a specialist in this. What are you seeing? Where's the disconnect, do you think?
Oh boy, I mean, this is such a loaded question, Tom, because I have a lot of opinions here. I mean, it's really literally the reason why I became a holistic pet health coach, because I was tired of banging my head against a brick wall every day trying to get answers. And so then I just started digging on my own. And there's a lot of integrative veterinarians that are out there blazing a trail, but I think it's a combination of a lot of things. One of them is that I feel like veterinarians, standard veterinarians by and large, are kind of stuck in this vein of standard of care and what they have been taught on how to approach something. So, what do we do with a rescue dog that comes into the shelter that is sick? We give a steroid, we give an antibiotic, and we give multiple amounts of vaccines, regardless of whether or not we know what's going on with that dog. So, we've got a lot of things going on out there. And we're not thinking about that it's wiping out the microbiome. Secondly, I just want to say I love our vets. They have the hardest stinking job in the world. But with that, they are also so very limited in time. I mean, they're seeing pet patients for 15, 20 minutes, and they're anesthesiologists, they're orthopedists, they're dermatologists, they're all the things. And it's hard to focus on one thing unless you're going to a specialist or unless you're going to an integrative physician, or I'm sorry, veterinarian. So most of the vets that pet parents are going to is, okay, I've got a skin issue. What do I do? Okay, bam, antibiotics, bam, steroids. That didn't work. Bam, Apoquel, because this is what has been set as standard of care. And I think, Tom, one of our jobs is we have got to change the standard of care so that we start looking at root causes. It is a symptom based approach rather than a functional based approach. And so, as a holistic pet health coach, I am trained in functional medicine, and I've had wonderful vets like Dr. Ruth Roberts who saw the writing on the wall and said, we have got to do something different. We have got to start approaching this from functional medicine standpoint rather than a symptom chasing standpoint. So I like to think I'm kind of the bridge between pet parents and vets. I'm here to come in and say, hey, let's step back. Let's look at the foundations of this, see what's actually causing the symptoms instead of just giving a drug to mask the symptoms. And I don't know why that disconnect is going on, but I feel like every day the tide is starting to turn. Just yesterday, a couple of days ago, I was on the phone with a traditional veterinary dentist, and we were talking about my 17-year-old cat who broke a tooth. And she was talking about one of the probiotics that she always gives. And she was like, well, this is just what I always do. So I popped her with some research that I've done, popped her with some facts, and she was like, holy smokes. Like, I had no idea. Like, she hadn't had time, and she's highly intelligent. She just had no idea. And I do think that some of them are a little like, I don't want to do it, because I think a lot of these functional things, they don't fit into a laboratory testing type thing. You know, we're obsessed with lactobacillus and bifidobacteria because those are two of them that we can make those in a lab. We can't make FMT in a lab. So, I mean, I could go on and on and on about this, but, you know, I think there's a time issue. I think there's a learning issue, not in the way that they can't learn right. It's what's being taught. We've got to start at the roots there too, and we've got to change how we look at what's taught and how we approach symptomatology just in general. Because, well, and the other factor is, I do want to say, is that healing is not linear. I think we live in a world where we want to fix it now. And especially if you're a pet parent that's frustrated, if you've been dealing with the skinny issues or diarrhea or whatever, it's hard. We want something that's going to help and fix now. But oftentimes it's just kicking the can down the road.
Yeah, I did a podcast that has not been released yet, but I did a podcast with a veterinarian who actually works in the emergency room, which was a crazy conversation. And she's great. And she's an incredible veterinarian. And I know that from experience because she had handled one of the most aggressive dogs that I have worked with, but also that I own. He doesn't live with me. He's kind of a staff dog. He lives at the facility. He's a Malinois who is, to what you say, and I actually say this too, gnarly. He's pretty gnarly. And anyway, so one of the things she said at the end, she's like, I listened to your podcast and I just want to thank you for doing the podcast with Dr. Ian Billinghurst, because she's now enrolled into the Billinghurst institution to learn more about a raw diet and what it does. And so
That's
she
awesome.
it was because to me, I'm similar to what you're saying. I'm the middle. I get to talk to people like you to then pipeline it to dog owners.
Yeah. Right.
And in most cases, those dog owners are also veterinarians. And that's something I've been seeing too, is a veterinarian that is eager and willing to learn they get to open up their eyes and have a new opportunity to not only help their own dogs, but of course their patients too, which is, I mean, that was like the most endearing thing that I could hear from somebody who listened to my podcast, as somebody who works regularly with pets every day, giving professional advice as a veterinarian. So that was pretty
Yeah.
cool. So what do
I
you,
mean,
what,
that's oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to
no,
interrupt.
please.
I think the tide is turning. I really do. I think it's starting to turn because animals deserve the same whole body approach that we can get as humans in functional medicine. Pet parents are so hungry for answers. They're so ready for the suffering to stop. And I went through years and years and years, 10 years of this with Darla before I just had to dig in and figure it out on my own. And I want to be that resource that I didn't have. And some of the other things that go into this is I was noticing that the quick fixes just weren't working. But the other great thing is that every time we are seeing success when we do a whole body approach adds to it just adds to changing the standard of care, which I think is so important. I get an email from a vet almost every day, and I am so blown away by a lot of them who are so humble about it. And it gives me so much hope because they come and they go, I had to tell you, I don't know a lot about this. Can you tell me how this would work? Can you tell me how it would work on a case like this? And they'll give me cases and say, what do you recommend? Can I tell you, never in my life did I ever think I was the one consulting with vets and they would be asking me what to do. But again, this is what I do all day. I look at poop, I look at things, I read this research, and they have a million things to do. I am always happy to be there as a resource for them, but I'm glad the window's open.
Yeah.
We're starting to climb through. They're
Yep.
getting interested. And thank you for sharing that story.
Yeah, no, it was incredible. And I think about that often, that, you never know who's listening and watching, and the impact that you can make. And again, and that's why I'm pipelining all this to dog owners who again are, I know a lot of veterinarians who listen to this because, they love learning and they love learning new stuff from new people. And I get to talk to people from all over the world too, as I get to travel. So there's new information.
Awesome.
And it's important for people to, and it's the same thing that I see with doctors now too, like even holistic veterinarians or even human doctors that are starting to focus on, different stem cells and different types of peptides, and maybe just talk about food. Like, hey, maybe eat good food, eat healthy, clean food. Let's start there. Like, it's starting to become more of a conversation, to your point of
Totally.
when people get sick, it's like, what's your diet like? Well, that's how much water are you drinking? How much exercise are you getting? That's a pretty dang good conversation starter and a first place to start, instead of here's a bunch of medication, see you next month, because,
Right.
whatever. And it's like that,
Spot on.
but, learning and talking to people like, Dr. Ian Billinghurst about him being in Australia, seeing what America has done with the system of get sick, come in, get sick, come in, get sick, come in, get sick, come in. It's
Care
like
instead of healthcare.
cha-ching, 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 cha-ching,
Yeah.
cha-ching. And you got to wonder. And of course, no veterinarian ever on the planet Earth has gotten into it going like, that's the system I want, of course. But unfortunately, inevitably, they get stuck in this from talking to them personally, not just my opinion. So it's subjective, like talking to them. Even Dr. Billinghurst, being a veterinarian, he has said, I got into it and I slowly started to realize that he was just becoming this
Cog in the wheel.
this Pez dispenser for big pharma and for food companies. And he's like, we're not treating. Anybody who hasn't listened to that podcast definitely should. He's the dog father of Raw. He's an OG vet from Australia, and I was in
Learn
Australia.
from him too. He's a good guy.
Yeah, I had an opportunity to sit down with him, which many people don't get to do because he lives so far away. But anyway, that was eye-opening to me. I'm like, wait a minute. What? And he's like, yeah, that's what's happening. So
Well, and I mean, I don't want to go there that much. This might be a whole nother podcast, but it's hard I mean, veterinary offices are still small businesses and private equity is buying up a whole lot of them. And that's a whole
everything.
nother thing. And then what we don't get is diversity in the microbiome or otherwise. We get more of standard of care. But it's less care for our dogs and our kitties. And what we're talking about a lot in functional medicine is that our pets are living longer, but they're not living better. The drugs are keeping them alive sometimes, but we need to change it from, as Dr. Bruce says, it's not what their lifespan is, it's what their health span is. And for a lot of these dogs, it's not very darn long. We
Yeah.
really start to see major breakdowns. 9, 10 years old, it's rare to see a senior with no problems.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And, and there's obviously a lot of factors that go into that: environment, diet, genetics. Lola was, she lived, depends on who you ask in my family, but if you ask some people, she was 19. If you ask others, she was 17. But she was old. She was with me through all my 20s, most of my 30s.
What breed was Lola?
Just a mix. She's just a mutt.
Oh.
She was a mutt that I picked up off the PetSmart floor one day on a Saturday, Sunday with my mom, going there to get something for the cat or something. And there was this litter of puppies and she was the last one. And I picked her up and, she's the best dog. She was a unicorn dog. She was like, the best. And so, but to my point, it's like she ate gravy train half her life, like
it's the decline in the microbiome. That's one of them.
Yeah. I'm sure.
I say that too. Like I think about, I'm like, okay, my dog's growing up, like had like co-op special, right?
Yeah.
Whatever we got from the feed and grain down the road.
Yeah.
But here's the difference. They were running around out on the farm. They were like, I grew up on a ranch, so they were eating like the cow after birth too. High microbiome special right there, because it's fermented too. And they're not getting exposed to the toxins. They're not getting the number of vaccines that are going on. And they were still eating natural food. They're still catching bunnies, and eating whole prey is like the epitome of like, we're doing what's best for the dogs. Because one question that I think about all the time, there's another scientist that I've been talking with, Dr. Zoolittle. I don't know if you've ever met with her. She's really super fun.
Zoolittle?
She's always Zoolittle, Dr. Zoolittle.
Like Doolittle, but Zoolittle?
Yeah, like Doolittle, but Zoolittle. Yeah. She's fun. And she, like she's a field scientist, but what we've been working on kind of together, and that is we're talking about specifically kidney disease and how it's linked to the gut. But big cats are not dying of these diseases. Wolves are not dying of these diseases, these gut problems, the kidney disease, the things like that. So, I mean, I feel like a lot of the answers are obvious. They're not spending time inside all day long like our pets do now. That affects them. They're eating a biologically appropriate diet. They're not exposed to as many toxins. And they have a stronger, natural, literally a legacy microbiome that's getting passed down. They've never had antibiotics. And so the very foundation of health, the microbiome, is getting diluted every generation that comes along, is my take on it.
It makes total sense. It makes the whole, like when you get into the rabbit hole of raw feeding, we do have not in a bad way, but the extremes where you do have people feeding. I made this joke. One of the podcasts we were talking about this. I was like, yeah, there's people out there that will feed like penguin toes and stuff. Where you're like, where do they find this stuff? You see in the bowl, and you see in the bowl, it's like furry and frozen, and there's like bald eagle eggs and goldfish from Somalia. It's crazy. So, but it's cool to see like how people are diving into it and really doing their research and seeing the change. If I were to ask you, let's say this, let's role play for a minute. I call you, I email you, and I say, hey, my dog has itchy everything. They're itching, their ears are gunky, they're itching all the time. They are a little bit red and irritated. What is your strategy? What is your go-to?
No matter what, we're going to switch up the diet because we want to remove the triggers. So I'm going to say, hey, Tom, you either need to do a food intolerance test so that we don't have to do any food trials, because I know that sounds daunting to a few. There's some good ones out there that I like, or switch everything completely so that we can switch the protein, switch the carb, so that we can remove those triggers and give the immune system a break. And this is the beauty of also rotating proteins, because again, we give the body less chance to mount an antibody response against something that it's eating if we're rotating proteins often. If we keep just kind of pounding away with the security system with the same thing, eventually it's going to put up the forces and say, yo, we're not going there, especially if the gut is imbalanced and we have some of the peacekeepers missing. Second, FMT all the way. I have seen it work magic. Again, it doesn't work in a it doesn't exist in a vacuum though, so I want that to be made clear. Fresh food or raw diet are really best for this kind of FMT, because we're feeding those beneficial microbes that are overall going to feed the entire ecosystem. And again, go back to the immune system. So a lot of times with the itching too, I also do things with Chinese medicine. So I'm a big fan of mixing TCVM with some FMT to help the skin and the gut lining seal. There's other simple ways we can do that too. With FMT, we could add something like an Aspergillosis. It's a yeast that helps feed the good bacteria, and also do some gut healing herbs. And these can be really simple: a marshmallow root, a licorice, an aloe vera, and acetylglucosamine is one of my favorite for gut sealing. And I like just L-glutamine that can do it too. Yes. Yes.
Listening to you say this, all this makes sense to me. But what I'm asking myself, okay, all right, I'm writing all this down, the mushroom root and the licorice. Okay, cool. Where does somebody get this stuff, and what's the dosage? I think that's the biggest question I get when I tell people, like, oh, try this. They go, how much? I go, I don't know. It worked for me. I have a 170-pound dog though. So what's your advice for people? And I don't mean to interrupt. We're going to continue down your roadmap here, but I have to ask that question, because people are going to go, okay, great. All that sounds great. How and how much and where do I get this?
Great question. I'm glad that you backed me up a little bit, because I talk about this all the time. Sometimes I can get ahead of myself, and we need to stop for a second and go back to basics here. So there's several supplements. I can send them to you if you want to like list them in the show notes that
I will.
kind of
All of this.
Do it for. There's actually a human supplement called Digest Ease that's got the aloe vera, the N-acetylglucosamine, and whatever. So usually it's got a little scoop in it. Usually I do about a fourth of a scoop per 20 pounds. And so that's something. When it comes to some of these other supplements, if it's not specifically a dog supplement, I always like to look for them in dog or cat, especially if it's somebody new or doesn't have a nutritionist or a coach that they're working with. Find the dog one, because they do exist. Standard Process makes great GI ones. There's Gut Ion that exists, that helps seal the gut.
Did that.
Yeah. And there's doggy and kitty marshmallow. I love Pet Health and Nutrition Center. I like Pets. I like Dr. Ruth Roberts products. Those are all options. So these are doggy and kitty specific ones that are going to have the dosing on them. So it takes a lot of the guesswork away from the pet parents.
Okay. And are we kitchen sinking this? I know you said all these things. Like, again, when somebody's listening to this and when I was doing my research on you, I also know that they can hire you as a coach too, which is really cool. Is that still something that people can do, or?
Kind of. I'm still recovering from losing Darla, and I'm pretty busy in the legacy side of things. So, if there's a really severe case that I'm like, I know I can help here.
Okay.
I'll take it on.
Okay. That's fine. I was just curious, but let's say again, for people listening, they have that itchy dog. So I'm going to list all the things that you're talking about. So the marshmallow root, the aloe vera, some of the Chinese stuff, and it'd be helpful for you to should they be kitchen sinking this, or should they be trialing this? Tell me how they should be doing this.
No.
Okay.
And I guess I'm speaking from a coach perspective, where if I was working like one-on-one with a client, I would be like, these are the supplements you need to do. But if we're going to work on basics and you have a dog that is itching right now,
Mm-hmm.
my non-kitchen sink 3 supplements would 3 steps: remove the triggers, incorporate FMT, and give doggy quercetin. And Dr. Ruth makes it from Histopause. Ask Ariel makes it. There's a lot of doggy quercetins on there, usually quercetin and nettles. So quercetin is an anti-inflammatory. It also helps the gut process histamine. It is nature's Benadryl, but it has huge benefits for the liver, the kidneys, the gut. So that would be my 3 steps right now.
Okay. Now, my question on removing triggers. So, for me, with Burley, with his itchiness and all this stuff, he is on multiple proteins. For somebody out there who's listening to this that maybe is on a We Feed Raw diet, or they're feeding bag kibble or whatever, I mean, do you suggest just, I mean, when we remove triggers, what would that mean for somebody like me who I do turkey, duck, and beef, I think. So would that mean try a different protein, try a complete, like try kibble, try
Um,
what do you?
as a canine nutritionist, I can never advocate for kibble. I mean, there are some decent kibble brands out there, but I always recommend freshening the bowl on top of that. Kibble's just so hard to digest and not great for the microbiome.
What
Again,
just really quick, um, what would be, because one question I always like to ask people, actually, I usually do this at the end. If you had to feed kibble, what are some brands that, in your opinion, are good?
um, the ones that I have experience with, because I try to stay away from, I like Sundays. I like Open Farm. Green Juju kind of has a kibble.
Okay.
So,
Just curious.
but to answer your question, Tom, going back, what I would do when I say remove the triggers is, yes, let's wipe the slate clean and see how the dog does for, at least at least a week. And if nothing's getting better, then we may need to wait for FMT to work more. But to make that a more clear answer, instead of doing turkey, duck, and beef, clean house, do rabbit and butternut squash, and keep it simple. We don't need, Gussie's gut is amazing, but if some dogs are really dysbiotic, they may not be ready for that amount of diversity yet. Sometimes we can get really far with a single protein like a rabbit, a butternut squash, which I love a lot better than pumpkin, everybody, because it's less starchy and also it's a great prebiotic. In a green, stick a broccoli, stick some dandelion in there. Dandelion is a great prebiotic as well. Dandelion leaves. Um,
And I
you
think
know,
dandelion leaf is in the Gussie's gut as well, I
yeah, it
believe.
is. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah, it is.
that's a one-stop
just
shop.
just keep it simple. And so, is this necessarily a complete diet? No. Do you need to still add calcium, all those things? Yes. But and don't worry about that. The point of the keeping it simple diet is for gut healing and immune system calming. So just keep it simple. And I'm glad that you brought up the kitchen sink thing, Tom, because as pet parents, I think we feel the need to throw everything at them because we just want something to work so bad. I
Yeah, I
did it.
mean, when
I've
you're
done it.
when you're saying that, I'm like, okay, hold on. All right.
Sorry.
All this is going in the bowl, right? That's what I want to do, because I'm just as desperate as anybody else to to not only like help my dog feel better, but also, people are like, what's wrong with him? Is he have
Yeah.
polka dots? I'm like, no,
Yeah.
I just is.
And I wrote an article on this to kind of streamline it a little bit too. I'll send that to you so you can put it in the show notes.
Please,
And
yeah.
that might help if like you can see it on paper and kind of refer to it. And I again list some of those specific things. This is where FMT really, really shines. But when we're dealing with severe cases like Burley, sometimes we need a little extra in there to help smooth over. It's like kind of like a war in the gut, and we gotta broker a peace treaty here. And sometimes there's multiple aspects to brokering that peace treaty, whether in removing triggers and building back short chain fatty acids are two of them.
Great, helpful. Butternut squash, interesting. So you could just buy organic butternut squash in a can, pop it in.
I buy the frozen like cubes, and
Okay.
I buy the frozen cubes, and I just put them in a little water and kind of steam them up. And my kind of general thing for pet parents at home is if you're looking at the bowl, you can't really do a whole lot wrong, but I like to make the produce, the veggies, 1/3 of the meal, the protein 2/3 of the meal. This just makes it easy if you're looking at the bowl. So, throw some butternut in there, throw a little broccoli in there if you want to, throw some turkey in there if your dog hasn't been eating that for a little while, and keep it simple. And it actually kind of gives the body a chance to take a collective break. I even recommend that with supplements too. If your dog is on supplements all the time, take a break. Take a break for a week. We need a reset. Very rarely do more than 5 supplements at a time ever do any good anyways. It just kind of is like too much input.
Yeah. Okay. Another topic I'd like to discuss, things I've been hearing. Usually when I hear the same thing from multiple different people, it's a wave of like, okay, this is new. But that wave is mushrooms have been something I like as a dog owner who's, I guess, a little bit more outreach than your average of finding stuff out, what's good for dogs nutritionally. But mushrooms have been a buzzword that I've been hearing in the last probably 6 months. What's your experience with mushrooms for dogs?
I will be full disclosure, not a ton. I have used them, but not a ton. I am in contact with several of the mushroom companies. I have them. Mushrooms are a great prebiotic. They could be great at balancing the immune system. They're
Now,
generally
what would you classify for dogs the difference between a pre and a probiotic?
okay. So the probiotics are the actual microbes that are existing in the gut. The prebiotics are what feed those microbes. So really, we don't have to like overthink it. It can just be like butternut squash would be a good prebiotic in this case because it's going to be one of those that feeds the carbohydrate fermenting bacteria. So, something easy like that. Slippery elm is another one. Um, if we want some more fiber. So really prebiotic is just what's feeding the probiotics, which are the actual microbial bacteria that are doing the work.
Okay, thank you.
So, but mushroom, there's been a lot of research done on chaga mushrooms and tremella for the gut brain connection as far as being a probiotic and modulating the immune system with gut health. And so, but I'm definitely not an expert on mushrooms. Do I incorporate them into my pet's diet? Yes, I do. I rotate them in and out, but I'm definitely not an expert on it.
Okay, thank you. And so what's your involvement now with Legacy? What is your role and what are you doing with, so for people who don't know Legacy Biome, well, you can explain what the company is, but that's just where I've gotten my FMTs from. But let's just talk about that. What is Legacy Biome and what's your role currently?
Well, Legacy Biome is again FMT for dog and cats, fecal matter transplant. And our founder, Jason Klopp, has a background in human health. He was a human naturopath, and so he kind of works on the human side of that as well. He loves doggies and kitties, and so he's very involved with research on the human side. So he wanted to get this out to the wider population in a capsule form. And so he started working with Dr. Margot Roman. She's kind of the pioneer of FMT because back before FMT was a thing, she was taking it out of one hind end and putting it in the other hind end. And so it's her legacy dogs that this is kind of all stemming from, why we call it Legacy. This is the pack that has the microbiome, minimally vaccinated, no antibiotics, running around, biologically appropriate diet. And what makes us different, again, is that we know every single one of our donors. We have a very small donor pool. So this is like a super premium FMT because these kind of microbiomes just don't exist anymore. That's what puts us above and beyond. And what eventually, I tried Legacy Biome on my own dog 5 years ago. What eventually led me to this spot now is it's the only thing that worked for my dog too, Tom. And got her over C. diff and threw me into this research. So my role there, I'm kind of like, I don't know, I guess I'm microbiome Melissa, kind of jack of all trades. I talk with vets if they have questions. I do communication. I do a podcast on the microbiome. And I work with customers that are, if they're having any issues or questions or what's going on. So It's full on. We'll say that.
I love it. And how long have you been associated and working with Legacy?
I think we're coming up on a year. So not very long. Yeah. They actually had contacted Dr. Ruth. And I was doing a podcast for Dr. Ruth and Dr. Ruth Roberts, and they had contacted her and said, happen to know anybody that's got on camera experience and knows a whole lot about the microbiome? And she's like, I got your gal, hold on. Because I used to be a news anchor and reporter, and I actually reported on health stuff for humans. I was in human holistic health before I switched over to pets. And so I was doing a lot of reporting on health anyways. And then with the Darla connection, and my mom actually passed away from a rare GI cancer linked to a microbiome imbalance. So
Wow.
that's
So
kind of how that all happened.
this is
Pretty
really like
personal.
embedded and
Yeah.
personal and an intimate thing that you're really pursuing for many reasons. And that's who I like to learn from. I'm like, that person gets it. They get it because they're passionate about it and they care. They didn't just pull something out of a hat and go, I'm going to do this for a job, or I'm going to do
Yeah.
research on this. It's like, no, you're full in it. And I love that.
Thank
Um,
you.
yeah,
I
it's
appreciate you asking.
incredible. What are the breeds? Curious. What are the breeds that the pack is from? Is it a mix of different breeds? What are the
They're
dogs?
poodles. They're standard poodles.
Cool. Cool.
And
Do
they
they,
are so darn cute.
yeah. Do they hunt with them at all? Do they do any retrieval work with them?
I think they do. I don't know. Dr. Roman's so busy these days. I just like when I see pictures of them, I see them like running through the forest, like sniffing things out. So, they're getting a
Being
lot of their little
dogs.
prey instincts figured out. And again, getting all that woodsy, disintegrating leaves and fermenting grass like in their paws. And
Being
I
dogs.
love it.
Yeah.
I wish we could do that for all dogs. Because there's no microbiome in a linoleum floor or a hardwood floor, unfortunately. So
Yeah. Yeah. Or just it's tough for dogs who live in cities too to and not all of them, but it is tough because and we see this obviously in the behavior and the training side where dogs
yeah,
are stuck inside all day and people are calling us going, hey, my border collie's being a jerk. I'm like, yeah, they're not supposed to be there, so it's like that's not even
they
a
need a
training
job,
thing. That's
right?
hey, you got wrong dog, wrong situation, but here's what you can do. So right now it seems like I want to just pick your brain a little bit, if you don't mind, on the peptide
Sure.
situation, because
Yeah,
I have gotten it. I take you immediately mentioned BBC 157, which I can't remember the acronym, but it's body
it's
something
body power.
something
Oh
BPC.
God, yeah, I don't know. It's been a while since I've worked with peptides, but I'll try.
Yeah, I take BPC myself. I've been taking it for a little bit now, just for tissue repair and stuff. I train jujitsu a lot, and I'm
Cool.
always just getting torn apart and grabbing and hugging and getting pushed down and split out, and it's a pretty violent hobby of mine. And I'm not getting any younger, and so the tissue repair for the BPC and the TB500 have been pretty cool to see my body recover faster.
Hmm.
Have you done any research on
Hmm.
BPC 157 or
I
peptides in
have.
general? Because
I
that's
have.
another thing that I'm starting to hear now, where people are like the peptide thing for humans. Obviously, neither of us are doctors, and even there's some doctors who don't know much about peptides. It's a very newer thing, and of course there's all sorts of politicians that are doing their best they can to try to revolutionize and make it normal because it's doing so much great work. And then there's the FDA that want to prove it. So obviously, please go out there and do your own research. But if it's kind of like, if you know, if you don't worry about it. But what are you seeing with peptides now, with the amino acids and how it's helping? I know it has tremendous effects in horses so far, and now they're starting to use it in dogs and cats for recovery. And I have a whole stack for Burley that I'm gonna do a whole podcast about for his recovery for his surgery as well.
That's awesome. Well, I'd love to hear how it goes. I was trialing a BPC 157 in regards to GI disease. I think BPC 157 is by and large being used as you mentioned it, which is in an orthopedic recovery joint type of way for its ability to lend itself to rebuilding tissues. So they're applying that same concept to the gut, is that BPC can strengthen gut wall integrity, is what it was being trialed for. Here's the nuance though, and here's kind of the differentiation. I think in horses, it's by and large being injected. And that's really where we need to get with the veterinarians who are willing to try it, is we need it to be injected, because when we give BBC 157 as a capsule, which is how I was trialing it with certain pets, I think we're losing a lot of it in the stomach acid. So I don't have a lot to report.
Okay.
It
Yeah.
really needs to be injected.
Yeah. So like a sub Q, cause that's how I take it too. And it's, you know, even today with the anesthesia that they were giving Burley, cause I was in the room with them just cause how big he is. And, um, but those were like, you know, giant needles and gauges, and I know, like I said, yeah. So I am diving headfirst into peptides for myself, because
Cool.
you know, I was like, well, before I give it to my dogs, I want to know what it's like, because I know tons of people, especially in the martial arts world, that use it and benefit from it, and I've heard stories over the years, and so I'm trying it now. But I do have a stack for Burley for his recovery, and one of the things in that stack is for his gut. So I'm really interested in doing more research on it, talking to more people about it, and obviously trialing it with him. So when he comes
Yeah.
home, I'm going to start that. And of course, like we use like the insulin needle, so he doesn't. I don't feel it. There's no way
If
he
you're
can.
injecting, that's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, because the
Yeah, I'm
one I had, I think if
subcutaneously.
you're, oh, I'm sorry. I think if it's in a capsule and you can get it down to where it's supposed to be past the stomach acid, the one that I was trialing was actually a human dose. And so I had to open the capsule to give it. And so that was a little bit hard because I never quite knew. And even when I was talking to the researchers about it and the vets behind it, they were like, "Yeah, we don't really know what dose, so just give it your best shot." And I was like, "Okay." I didn't see it do any harm. Um, as far as whether or not it helped, I think the jury's still out. I'm glad you brought it up, because it reminds me I'm gonna try it on my cat who's got another rare condition going on. I think it's my dogma in life too. Figure out these rare conditions in pets. I didn't notice anything different with Darla, but she had something pretty rare going on that we don't see every day, and it I had to give it to her in her food, so we don't know.
Yeah, it's hard to tell when you're doing it orally. And yeah, so we have the yeah, it's just yeah, it's the injections, and so
But I'm glad
it's
that we're making, I'm glad that we're going down these roads and trialing and thinking of these things. It's the same with stem cells. There's a lot coming out with stem cells and kidney disease and GI disease, especially immune mediated IBD, which is a whole nother ball of wax. Cause I think, IBD just gets thrown out there. Irritable bowel disease gets thrown out there all the time. I hear vets, I think probably 95% of my clients have said, but my dog got diagnosed with IBD. Okay, is it really IBD? There's a couple different kinds, immune mediated or just like an inflammation. Or are we dealing with a food intolerance issue and a microbiome imbalance, which looks the same?
yeah. Yeah, that's probably a
That's
whole
a whole
can
other
of
podcast.
it's a whole can of worms, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you what's with so with Burley, I he started to develop, and it may be just all tied, is kind of like the black like gunk stuff in his pads gut related as well, because it kind of seems like it's like his webbing is red, and it's got the black almost like dirt, but not. Is that gut related as
That's
well?
giving me a very important clue. And it's telling me that behind some of this microbiome imbalance, there's also a yeast imbalance. We're going to probably throw another step in there. And yeast is such a huge road. I don't know if I want to go down because I don't want your listeners to be confused. Um, when you see the black, that's telling me that there's yeast overgrowth. And most of the time, if the yeast is on the skin, it's stemming from a yeast overgrowth in the gut.
Okay, and when he went down for anesthesia, his left ear, you know, my wife keeps telling me, "Oh, he stinks, he stinks, he needs a bath, he needs a bath." And He's a dog. He's a stinky dog. I mean, but what's really stinks is his ear. And so I was like, oh, his ear is what smells. And then, so I said, can you just check his ear? And they scoped it and everything. And they said, it's not an infection. And he said, I mean, just right before I got on the phone with you, we were on the phone with Dr. G. He said, it's actually yeast. He said, he's got yeast buildup in this ear, but not this ear. So
It'll go to the paws, it'll go to the ears, it'll go to the armpits. You'll see it in the flanks, exactly where Burley had it. You'll see it in those flanks. And when I first saw that picture, I'm like, that looks like yeast to me.
Okay. But, so what can I do? Help.
Here we go down this road. So again, just to set the stage, yeast also occur in the gut and they help balance the bacteria. There's beneficial yeast, there's unbeneficial yeast. If they are beneficial, if they get out of control, then they can be unbeneficial, but they can be up to 200 times bigger than all those microbes that are in there. So if they're out of balance, they're like the big giants coming in and they're kind of like, they'll just get everybody out of the way and they can knock off the balance of the microbes doing the work or prevent them from doing the work. So if I suspect there's a yeast problem, I always say, try and tackle that first. There's a lot that you can get to with FMT. So it tells me something that you got to a certain level of relief with Burley and FMT, because FMT does contain those beneficial yeast. It contains the yeast diversity as well. So if we give the right yeast, it's going to crowd out the bad yeast. But sometimes the yeast has gotten to a level, and it could be now because some of his levels are low, where we need to just do a couple weeks of let's knock out the yeast. There's a couple of companies that have a good yeast product. Again, making it easy for their listeners. Dr. Connor Brady is like the yeast guru.
Connor Brady?
Dr. Connor Brady. He's like the yeast guru. And we've talked about this a lot, and I've got a podcast on it if anybody wants to check it out, and it goes into all that stuff about yeast and how it interacts and how it can prevent microbes from engrafting. So he's got a great product. Okay. Yes, he's got Dr. Connor Brady's yeast defense. It's a great one. There's another one called Ask Ariel that's got a yeast defense. But the key with yeast is when it starts to get killed, it gets real pissed, and it kind of puts off some die-off toxins as it's on its way out. And so the great thing about Dr. Brady's product is it's also got a binder that's going to grab some of those on the way out. So yeast can sometimes make the dog feel junky just in general, because it puts off these kind of like, sorry, excuse me, these toxins as it dies, because it dies and it gets mad and it's like, well, I'm going to throw a fit on the way out.
Okay. So I'll look that up. And just for people listening,
sorry, Tom.
You're fine. Everything that we talk about in here, I'll put in the show notes. So you guys, I'll organize all this for people so they can find it. And a lot of times I get really great guests off of my guests. So anytime you say, like you said, Dr. Zoolittle, or you say Dr. Connor Brady, like I'm already like, okay, cool. I can try to reach out to these people and talk to them about stuff.
And if you haven't had Dr. Ruth Roberts too, like she's such a pioneer in bridging the gap in holistic and functional medicine between regular vets and holistic vets. And that's her life's work now, is to bridge that gap.
Amazing. Definitely. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Dr. Brady's amazing. You get him on here, he will go down east, and you think I nerd out. Wait until he gets on here. But he's Irish, and so he has a fun way of explaining too.
Awesome. I love that. Yeah. All these people I write down, that's a lot of times how I get most of my guests is people like you come on and you say, hey, and then I reach out and I say, hey, can we talk?
I saw Dr. Frick. She's one of my favorite. I love Dr. Frick. And she worked with Darla a lot. So her and I worked together a lot on Darla. It was nice to see her on here. Yeah, she's fantastic.
She was great. She was amazing. She went to breakfast with me, my whole family, my extended family.
Yeah.
She came to my house. She went to my in-laws' house. She adjusted everybody. She's so funny. She's great. She's like, I don't want to go stay at the hotel, because I asked her, I'm like, do you want to? It was close to Christmas time, so there was like a Santa, breakfast with Santa type thing that my whole family was at, like, 10 of my family members. And we got done with the podcast on a Sunday in December, I believe. And I just said, hey, I could bring you back to your hotel, or, I could take you out for breakfast if you'd like. And she's like, well, I don't want to go sit in my hotel room by myself. Let's go. So she
Yeah,
came,
she's the
and
sweetest lady.
yeah, she's great.
I
She's great.
She told me she had fun. I was emailing with her a couple days ago actually, and I said, "Caught you on No Bad Dogs, great job." And she's like, "We had a really fun day."
We did. We did. And,
Yeah.
and we, she ended up talking to, people at my in-laws at the breakfast table. And they were like, oh, we got a
Mhm.
husky that's arching. She's like, well, my flight doesn't leave till tomorrow. Let's just go adjust him. And I'm like, okay.
Aw.
So she went over, and it was funny because she's in my house. She adjusts my shepherd, my Dutch shepherd, and she adjusted my in-laws dog. And then on the way out, she sees my cat, and she's petting my cat and goes, boom, and then adjusts him. It was like this little sneaky adjustment on the way out. She's like, he'll feel better. And I was like, that's great.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm gonna ask her if she can come out here to my house.
Yeah. It was, but again, like it's so cool that I get to just get to know these people. It is incredible. And one of her videos, she probably doesn't know this, but one of her videos on social media went like crazy viral.
Seriously?
Yeah, it
That's
was
probably
like,
the one I saw. Yeah, she's doing
yeah,
she was doing great.
yeah,
Well, and I mean, it's just her. I think her work solidifies how important diet is because her specialty is HTMA. And I took one of her hair tissue mineral analysis classes because that's like, holy smokes. So we went over it all, and it's interesting how the fibers have changed. And one of the most important fibers for animals is like fur. But how many of our animals are eating fur is also one of the biggest sources of manganese. We can't replicate that unless we start like feeding fur. So we're missing vital nutrients and um in manganese and one of the fibers because the hair is not digested. It's not it's just in there to help things move. And now we're giving more of a diet where for giving even like a butternut squash, it's still getting digested. So I don't know. It's interesting. I
yeah,
pick her brain on stuff too. Nutrient levels, it's kind of a double-edged sword. Nutrient levels make a difference on how well the microbiome absorbs, and what the microbiome is absorbing um has to do with how well the body does. Because I mean, if the small bowel is not working properly, I mean, most of this bacteria is housed in the colon, large intestine. But if the small bowel is not working properly, which is where all these nutrients and vitamins and all this stuff is absorbed, um, and we have absorption issues, then we start seeing the body breakdown. We get out of balance everywhere. That's why, low vitamin B levels are one of the telltale signs of IBD and or SIBO or an IBS. If the vitamin B levels, cobalamin and folate are low, um, that's like we go digging. Is the small bowel inflamed?
yeah, it's like she started telling me about how she's doing follicle tests and how she's getting into looking at the nutrients of like the follicle and the hair. And she like, she's so funny. She buzzed Burley on the way out. She like collected hair. It was really funny. So
Nice.
she kind of dove in that a little bit with me.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
we did that with Darla.
okay.
We did hair tissue mineral analysis, and it's amazing what pops up. I think it's a great tool for pet parents because when we take a blood test, it is a snapshot in time. And lots of times, like serum, as they call it, for just doing a blood test, it doesn't give it the whole picture of what's actually being absorbed by the body via the small bowel. And so when we're testing the tissues, then we find out what's really going on. And manganese is the number one issue with a lot of these older and aging dogs that are starting to get cruciate tears and ligament issues or arthritis, orthopedic issues. It's if we test them, as Dr. Frick would say, they probably have next to nil in the manganese.
Yeah. I don't know what happened with that. I don't know if we ever got the results back or not. I'll text her and ask her, but Yeah, and speaking of the cruciates and the TPLOs and those surgeries, that's one thing I was like really excited about the BPC 157 is because I know like my Dutchie had the cruciate tear, and so she went through the TPLO, and that was something that was brutal for her. Like the recovery on that, because it's an invasive surgery. I mean, they're putting screws
Very,
into her bone, and
very,
they're
yeah.
shaving her bone down. And so I was like, the recovery is difficult. So if you could maybe even avoid that surgery with maybe a localized shot of the BPC 157. Who knows? Because I trained with a guy who had a low grade tear in his Achilles,
Yeah.
and he went to the doctor, and they said surgery and then 6 months of recovery and PT, and then he ended up just doing peptides essentially, and it recovered fully. And he was like, no surgery. And I was like,
Amazing.
so whatever that is, I want to know more. If it's legal and it's safe,
Right?
I want to know more, more about it. And
Totally.
maybe if it's not legal, I still want to know about it because
Yeah. I'm like, will you pass that on to me on the
yeah,
DL?
100%. And so anyway, I'm always like that. Once BPC 157 was introduced to me, that's immediately the injury. And even if you do the surgery, the recovery, I was like thinking of it like immediately because that recovery or that surgery is so
Yeah.
popular.
Well, and even like, there's the concept of using FMT as one of the recovery tools too. And here's why. When a dog goes through a physiological or psychological trauma via the gut brain connection, again, the brain operates off of what the gut is telling it mostly. So think about us when we get nervous and stressed out. It's like we can feel it in our gut. We get an upset tummy. We might start having some bathroom problems. Stress affects the gut. It can affect the gut wall. It can shift the gut microbes, and it keeps them literally on edge so that, again, they're always on the lookout. With the signaling that goes from the gut to the brain via the vagus nerve, if it's like they're almost about to sound the alarm. So the brain starts being on edge and gets more anxiety, which can affect recovery. So now they're kind of passing alarm signals back and forth. And I was talking with another nutritionist who does Canicross. She might be another fun one for you too. And her dog tore a ligament. And part of her like 911, we've got to get this dog recovered, is start doing FMT because the dog psychologically was and physically was traumatized by it. And that stress can affect the brain and the gut. It's
Sure.
amazing how it's all connected.
Yeah. Yeah. That's one of the first things I learned about gut biome was the brain and
Really?
yeah, that was like
Cool.
not necessarily in recovery, but that the brain and the gut talk to each other with
Yeah.
anxiety and
Yeah.
just how
Yeah.
it affects behaviors, how it was first kind of presented to me of like, oh,
Yeah.
I didn't
Well,
really.
and I mean, Dr. Ruth I actually have a podcast with Dr. Ruth this afternoon. We're talking about the gut brain connection, but back to some of these tears, what she is kind of known for is spay neuter syndrome. And talking about how these dogs younger and younger and younger are having these CCL cruciate issues that are going on, hip dysplasias, double elbow dysplasias, a lot of these little ones before a year old having double elbow dysplasia surgery. Holy smokes. I have found a way around it with a couple of clients, with doing some TCBM, microbiome stuff, things like that. There is a way to get through it, but it's amazing how it's all connected. And I mean, thank you again for having me on. This has been so fun because we get to talk about all this stuff that just needs to get out in the general public. I feel like I can vent here. I'm like, all right, let's talk about all this stuff that's going on.
Yeah, that's it. It's just, like I said, it's just for people to know. You either can take it and be like, it's not for me, or you can take it and really think about it, and it might help. I know, like I said, so much stuff in my life has improved because of things that I've heard on podcasts from other people. They said, hey, I'm
Awesome.
struggling with this, whether it's mental health or it's physical or it's internal or it's whatever. And they're like, this is what I did. And I'm like, I'm going to try that. And it's amazing what you can learn from other people. Like, hey, I'm doing this and it's helped, and you try it, and if it works, great. And that's really what this podcast has become.
It's awesome.
I have some rapid fire questions
Yay.
for you.
I love rapid fire.
So I want you to answer them as fast as you possibly can. They could even be one word answers, but try to keep it around a minute if you can. And I'm gonna rapid fire them. Okay, you ready?
Okay. Yep.
Okay. Are most dog problems actually gut problems when it comes to skin?
Yes.
Good. Can fixing a dog's gut change its actual behavior or temperament?
Yes.
I like the yeses. Could your dog's anxiety be coming from the gut?
100%. Most dogs have allergies and anxiety at the same time. It's the double A's.
Double A's, anxiety and allergies.
Anxiety and allergies, they always go hand in hand.
And your
Leaky gut, leaky brain, inflamed gut. Then we have the immune system that is on edge. And it's like it's like the gut is the second brain, but it's the louder one, right? And so if it's noticing something is on edge, then it's going to kind of signal to the brain to like, hey, you need to watch out to that. And it's like two friends talking on the phone, like playing telephone, and whether they're not, they're talking about like, oh, hey, I'm going to have a great day. And whether or not they call and say, hey, I think somebody's breaking into my house. Like, come help. You panic if your friend panics, like I'd panic. And then the brain's like, should I panic for you? Should I panic? Is there fire? Should I call the fire? What's going on?
100%. Is kibble ruining dogs' guts?
Yes. I'm saying yes. I'm also trying to be diplomatic because here's what I want to say also. I don't want to blame. I don't want to shame. Pet parents are doing the best that they can. But
100%.
I do think we need to freshen the bowls. We need to give the microbes something biologically appropriate to eat. Kibble's so hard to digest. I know we're dealing with what we've got, but I think this is one of the factors why we're seeing a decline in health span.
Yep. Well, I did an interesting podcast with, see if I don't have it with me. It's a book. It's called The Dog's Table. And it's a beautiful, basically cookbook for dogs. It's an amazing, incredible, creative cookbook. And cool. I did a podcast with them, and I love what you just said about freshening up the bowl. Because one thing I tell people is like, listen, to your point exactly. One thing, I do a lot of podcasts with, obviously advocates for, because it just goes down the line. It's like every single person I talk to that's talking about health, that's talking about gut biome, that's talking about longevity, that's talking about cancer preventives, that's talking about a longer life, that's talking about less surgery. Every single person I'm talking to all say the same exact thing about your dog's diet. And so I'm listening. I'm like, okay, tell me more, right? And one of the things that I think dog owners get overwhelmed with, and sometimes even like they want to run away from it, they're turning it off. They're like, I don't want to hear it because they can't help it. But the reality is, to your point, it's okay, feed your dogs kibble, but throw some meat in there. Go out and get a 99-cent bag of butternut squash or broccoli or whatever. My dog loves carrots.
Throw some. My favorite is give them an unsalted sardine, like super omega-3s plus the meat plus the right calcium phosphorus ratios. Sardines are like the superfood for humans too. I give my pets sardines all the time. And I just have to add, because this is me getting on my canine nutritionist soapbox.
Please.
I have so many people say to me, but when I Google, I see the top 3 that shall not be named, and we all know what they are. I can give you the pet food companies come up as the best. Pet parents, from my mama heart to yours, and as a canine nutritionist, these are not the best foods. These are the foods that spend the most on marketing. And they are the ones that have funded their own studies and spend the most on marketing. Some of my favorite commercial foods, and there's some great ones out there, promise you, half the people have never heard of them. Probably more than that. Most people have never heard of the foods I recommend if they say, hey, I just don't have time to make it. Okay, no problem. Here's some of the foods I recommend. They go, well, why have I never heard of this? It can't be that great. Oh, yes, it can, because they spend their time and their money on analysis and making sure it's all nutritional and biologically appropriate and absorbable and all those things, and not on the like super marketing. So I want to give a shout out to those companies that are working hard every day to do that.
Preach. Agreed. Yep. Okay. Are antibiotics potentially ruining dogs' gut biome long term.
Yes, absolutely. And here's two things. Antibiotics have their place in time, and we're really going to have to get targeted on when we start using antibiotics because again, I am seeing in both my experience and in study some of these gnarly bugs that are becoming antibiotic resistant. We've really got to cut down on just using them for a virus or a protozoa like Giardia. That's not technically a bacteria, but we're using metronidazole, which is an antibiotic, on it because it also works as an intestinal anti-inflammatory. These antibiotics, because they just kind of blaze through the microbiome ecosystem and forest, and it's really hard to regrow it. I mean, think about when we blaze down a rainforest, or if we bulldoze down a rainforest, it takes a really long time for that ecosystem to recover. It's not any different with our microbiomes, and we have to help it out. We have to help it out because we're seeing the repercussions of antibiotics down the road. Although, like, in Burley's case, if you've got an infection, a serious infection, yes, that's where we need them, but it can't be. My hope is that we stop using antibiotics for symptom management unless we know.
Do you feel like veterinarians are overprescribing medication without really digging into the actual cause and the root of the problem?
Standard practice? Yes, I do. Gosh, they're all going to hate me.
No, I don't think so. I think veterinarians know, they know who we're talking about. Maybe they work with them at the, where they're actually mindful about what they're doing, and again, that veterinarian that I had on, and we're working on some technical issues with that, but we're working on it. One of the things she said is, she's like, I'm a vet. She's like, I love dogs. She's like, I don't have enough time. When she was a small practice, not ER, she's like, I don't have enough time with my clients. She's like, I don't. Like,
but I hear all the time too.
Somebody's asking me, if it's time to put their dog down or not, and I have to run to another patient.
Yeah.
She's like, that sucks.
Yeah. And a lot of times the pet parents will ask for something. This is why Cytopoint and Apoquel are so popular, because the pet parents are like, I need something to get the itching stopped now.
That's what I did. Yeah. Yeah.
And no blame or shame on you. I went through all the same stuff. We don't know what we don't know until we know better. Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like FMT is the future of gut biome health or dog health in general?
100%. 100%. I wouldn't be working in FMT and with Legacy Biome if it wasn't something that I believed in, because again, this is my heart and soul. It's my heart dog. It's my mom. I have a reason to be here doing this. And the more I dig into this and the more I look into this, the more I see it is attached to all the just functional mechanisms of the body. And when you think about it, again, more organisms in our gut than there are cells in the body. How can we not give that a whole lot of validity in what it's doing? Good, bad, or otherwise.
Now, this is a question. If somebody were to ask you this, what would you say? Would you give your dog another dog's poop if it helped them become healthier?
1,000%, because I have. And in fact, I have another dog's poop frozen in my fridge right now, or in my freezer right now. It was, but Darla passed away in December, and she was going through something really tough. But because I know the power of FMT, I thought, okay, let's try this. And there was a pregnant dog that was able to donate, and pregnant poop's pretty awesome because it's got other immunoglobulins and other stuff in there, and it didn't get here on time. So I still have it, and I'm going to save it. It's like Rita Hogan says, hashtag freeze a turd. If you've got a dog that hasn't taken, antibiotics, minimal vaccines, healthy, well-fed. I mean, Legacy Biome is obviously the easier way, but if you really feel so inclined, freeze a turd.
That's awesome. Yeah. Who does need FMT and who doesn't need FMT? Actually, let me rephrase that. what dogs need FMT and what dogs do not need FMT?
That's a tough one. I'm going to say, I think here's what FMT doesn't cause harm, right? The first principle is cause no harm. Do no harm. That's, and I'm not comparing it to a medical treatment. It's not, and that's not what I'm saying. And I'm not a vet. But I think, again, going back to my theory of the dilution as the microbiome as dogs go on, I don't see very many dogs that don't have a problem these days. There's always something going on. And I think because FMT and the health of our microbiome is the foundation of health for our pets, I don't see any reason why not. In fact, I recommend it as maintenance, like especially if you've got a senior dog. They've got these amazing tests that are coming out, or research coming out right now, that certain microbes that have to do with mood and agility and like motivation go way down when you have a senior dog. So you don't just have like a grumpy senior. There's a reason for that. And so if we can give them FMT as part of the healthy aging process as maintenance, like why not do it once a year? I mean, the microbiome shifts all the time anyways. It goes through seasons just like we do. But I think it is a great tool to have in the pet parent toolbox to use it seasonally as maintenance. There's very few conditions where I wouldn't recommend it. If you've got like bleeding ulcers or things like that, or ulcerations, and we need to be careful with cancer because of antibody levels and things like that, and white blood cell levels, those would be things we'd have to look at closer.
Yep. No, that makes sense. Is raw feeding better than kibble, or do you feel like it's trendy?
Raw feeding is better than kibble, in my opinion. It's more biologically available.
Yep. What do you think the biggest lie in dog health right now currently is?
Good one. Can I just go back and say any fresh food is better than kibble too? Can we back up for a second? Any fresh food, any fresh food. I used to be hardcore raw, Tom. But I've done a lot of research. Raw, great. Fresh, great. Gently cooked, great. The thing is, food is food. It's not human food. It's not dog food. It's food. We eat meat and vegetables and fruits, or at least we should be, and so should they. Okay. What is you said the biggest lie in the pet industry right now? Was that okay?
Yeah. What would you say, like, that you're seeing?
Oh gosh, there's so many. I think I'm going to rapid fire 3 answers: that we're not putting enough emphasis on the gut microbiome as being a root cause. I do think antibiotic use is up there. I think we're using it too frequently, and I feel like some vets are just not willing to pull off the blinders that antibiotic resistance is happening. It is happening, and continuing to do this is only going to continue to make it grow. And probably my third one, and it may be up there too, is that all the research points to the big kibble brands as the safest, and that a hydrolyzed protein is going to solve all the problems. Kicks the can down the road.
Case.
Yeah, I think it just kicks the can down the road. A hydrolyzed protein is going to help in the short term. Again, it's like when you hydrolyze a protein, it's like hiding. It's like hiding the protein from the immune system so it can't mount an antibody response. But the body's pretty dang smart, and eventually it's going to catch on.
Do you feel like dogs are over-vaccinated?
Yes.
Do you feel like dogs are over-vaccinated and it causes them more harm than good?
Yes. Oh boy, I'm going to get it.
Okay. What, knowing what you know now, what would you never do again as a dog owner currently that you did before?
Symptom chase. instead of figure out what's getting to the root. I mean, I spent 10 years symptom chasing, and um I wouldn't feed a biologically inappropriate my dog was on kibble when I first got her, and it led to the dysbiosis. So I wouldn't feed kibble, and I with any rescue, this is just me. I hope maybe someday I'll rescue another dog. I'm just not ready now, but I will absolutely 100%, no matter what, do FMT with a new one. These are good questions, Tom. I mean, I'm sure there might be some better answers in there.
No, they're all just, subjective to you. That's why I asked you.
Okay.
I think we'll wrap it up there. That was incredible, Melissa. Thank you so much
You're welcome.
for
Thank you
coming
for
on.
having me. What a great combo.
Yeah, it was really, and again, I have pages of notes, so it's a little bit different because I said it earlier, and I jokingly say this, but I'm selfishly just getting free information from people like you who have dedicated their entire life to what I'm talking about here today, and I really appreciate it, and this was extremely valuable, and I know people out there that are listening hopefully are learning a lot from this conversation. And again, everything that we talked about as far as products and things that we can that they can supplement with their dogs, I'll leave in the show notes. Is there anything that you would like to plug for people out there? Anything that you'd like to add where people can find? Obviously, the FMT is the big one, which is Legacy Biome, which I'll link. But Legacy Biome is the company that I used as well. Anything else you want to plug in there? Social media, anything?
Yeah. Also, we've got a podcast that's focused on the microbiome. So if any of you pet parents want to dig in more to what the microbiome is linked to, how it functions, how it can affect different health systems, yeah, check out the Microbiome Matters podcast on the Legacy channel, on YouTube. We've got some great vets on there, and I feel the same way Tom does. It's amazing that I get to talk to all of these vets all the time. I think Dr. Ruth Roberts is an amazing resource for pet parents. She, like Dr. Judy and like so many Dr. Brady, who are like blazing these trails in integrative medicine, and just getting out there and doing it. And
you're talking about Dr. Judy Morgan? Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, she's coming on. She's coming in studio, which is exciting.
That's soon. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did one with her a couple months ago. It was fun, but keep an ear out. Hopefully we can get together soon. I am working on some major connections between kidney disease and the microbiome, and I think it is going to change the way that we look at chronic kidney disease. And I hope it changes the way we look at chronic kidney disease, because I had to learn the hard way. And the gut and the small bowel have a much bigger role in kidney disease than we thought. And if we're going to look at the kidneys, we got to look at the gut too, because it's one of the only organs that doesn't regenerate. And so we've got to stop it from losing its cells and its nephrons to begin in the first place. And this is going to be a major focus coming up. And so pet parents, if you're dealing with a chronic kidney issue, let's look at the gut too. It's going to be super important.
Yeah, you always have an open invite. So any new information that you find,
you got to come on my podcast now too and share Burley's story after we get done with FMT. I want to hear about it.
The test is it's upstairs. His poop is upstairs. It's going out today. So once we get the retest, I think that'll be a great kind of full circle of like
2 months from now.
Yep.
I'm like a doctor, like do this for 2 months and then call me.
Yeah. Cool. Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. It's been incredible. I think just leave open Riverside for like 2 minutes so everything uploads and then you're good to close it out. But thank you guys for listening. Thank you for watching. And thank you, Melissa, for coming on. It was a real pleasure. We will talk to you soon. Bye, everybody.